what kind of language does our mind use? What language is consciousness implemented in? Is consciousness implemented in the mind? Is it implemented in physics? Is it implemented below physics? We don't know that, right? And so we can test this by trying to build systems that look for such languages. And there are some people in philosophy who think that machine consciousness is a preposterous idea, like Anil Seth and Thomas Nagel and so on, and Ned Block. And there are some arguments that they will bring forth, for instance, that consciousness is ineffable, which means you cannot functionalize it, you cannot really capture what it means. Then there are limitations to computation, that basically human minds somehow do more than computation. And then that you need quantum computation instead of classical computation, that the nature of experience is not substrate independent, it only works on certain substrates, and otherwise it doesn't, regardless of what the substrate is doing, it's about what the substrate is being. Then there is this question of whether telepathy plays a role. I don't know how many of you are aware of this, but in the 1950 paper where Alan Turing talks about the Turing test, he also discusses the possibility of telepathy. And he asked this question, what if telepathy was real? Would this doom our hopes of ever building AI? And it's super interesting that most people who are summarizing this paper skip this section. And some of his biographers talk about it, and one of them basically said, oh, this was because Turing read this paper from the 1930s where a number of people discussed the possibility of telepathy despite the paper not being properly peer-reviewed. But of course, when Turing wrote this in 1950, peer review was not really a thing. So back then, when people looked at the world, they thought there are individual intellects which try to make sense of the world on their own, and they talk to each other about this, and in this way they get deeper, and it's actually making sense of the world is an interaction between intellects and not between committees of peer reviewers that reach a consensus, and everything that is outside of the consensus is not scientific. So for Turing, he doesn't know whether telepathy exists, and it's not completely out of the question because so many people are so sure about it and describe their experiments. And so regardless of whether it's true, let's go into the possibility, what would this imply? And he doesn't go very far in it, but what it might imply is that parts of what makes you, of your own mind, of your own functionality, are computed outside of your brain. Right? If telepathy is possible, if you can somehow transmit information without having a direct neuron-to-neuron connection, but you can somehow vibe with other people, and it doesn't need to be something that is breaking physics, right? It could be simply you stand next to somebody and your bodies go into resonance with each other in similar ways as the cells within your own body go into resonance. And you can observe such a resonance between mothers and infants, right, where they seem to be very synchronized, or with people that you have very good chemistry with, that you feel that you have perception of their emotion and of their some of their physiological states just by standing next to them without looking at them. And if we take this to be an instance of telepathy, it means that some of the functionality of your own mind relies on a feedback loop through the other organism. And so having a system that is completely in isolation to the world might be missing something important. And if you take the extreme position, like Mike Levin, then it could be that consciousness is largely an ambient pattern that is not discovered independently in every organism in you, but is something that is inspired by the vibes around you, that basically, because other organisms are exhibiting the same pattern, your own multicellular arrangement is picking up on this pattern and is basically resonating with it, and as a result, your mental development is much faster. By itself, that is not an argument against AI, but it might make it practically more difficult, right? Because the search space becomes much larger.